Henry George Daily Devotional Devotees, welcome to episode 35. Book 2, no, Book 3 right in front of us, The Laws of Distribution. How exciting. Chapter 1, The Inquiry Narrowed to the Laws of Distribution. Oh, we have a nice little Adam Smith quote to kick us off. The machines that are first invented to perform any particular movement are always the most complex, and succeeding artists generally discover that with fewer wheels, with fewer principles of motion than had originally been employed, the same effects may be more easily produced. The first philosophical systems in the same manner are always the most complex, and a particular connecting chain or principle is generally thought necessary to unite every two seemingly disjointed appearances. But it often happens that one great connecting principle is afterward found to be sufficient to bind together all the discordant phenomena that occur in a whole species of things. This is Adam Smith, Essay on the Principles which Lead and Direct Philosophical Inquiries as Illustrated by the History of Astronomy. The History of Astronomy. This makes me think of a post on x.com, I guess, by Jonathan Blow the other day. Let's see if it's still there. Here it is. He posts a SpaceX image here of the Raptor engine, I guess. Here was their initial one. And second, Raptor 2, Raptor 3. And they each have increasing sea levels and increasing RVAC, which who knows what RVAC is? Not me. And then he calls this, he said this is how to program computers, because he's throwing shade on the programming industry and their overcomplication. Anyway, back to George, Chapter 1, The Inquiry Narrowed to the Laws of Distribution. Necessary relation of these laws. The preceding examination has, I think, conclusively shown that the explanation currently given in the name of political economy of the problem we are attempting to solve, note that that problem is, why is there poverty alongside progress? George says that the current economy thinking is no explanation at all. So, we continue. That with material progress wages fail to increase but rather tend to decrease cannot be explained by the theory that the increase of laborers constantly tends to divide into smaller portions the capital sum from which wages are paid. For as we have seen, wages do not come from capital, but are the direct produce of labor. Each productive laborer, as he works, creates his wages, and with every additional laborer there is an addition to the true wages fund, an addition to the common stock of wealth, which, generally speaking, is considerably greater than the amount he draws in wages. Nor yet can it be explained by the theory that nature yields less to the increasing drafts which an increasing population make upon her. Yes, the overpopulation argument we just dealt with. For the increased efficiency of labor makes the progressive state a state of continually increasing production per capita, and the countries of densest population, other things being equal, are always the countries of greatest wealth. I also like to say that the cities of greatest density within the same country, where we would assume that most of these other things would be equal, are usually the cities of greatest wealth. See, I'm all about saying usually. George is kind of all about saying always. Let's go back. Let's continue. So far, we have only increased the perplexities of the problem. That's kind of funny to say, because I know the solution, so it all seems clear to me. We have overthrown a theory which did, in some sort of fashion, explain existing facts, but in doing so have only made existing facts seem more inexplicable. Yes, well, this is the Chestertonian fence. We've destroyed the fence. We better have a reason why. Similar to the Max Clark shoelaces theory of tradition. We have untied the knots in our shoelaces, and then we've tried to start walking again, but our shoe has come off. We need to tie our laces with a new knot. All right, let's back to George. I'm in a good mood today. Who knows why? It is as though, while the Ptolemaic theory was yet in its strength, it had been proved simply that the sun and stars do not revolve about the earth. The phenomena of day and night and of the apparent motion of the celestial bodies would yet remain unexplained, inevitably to reinstate the old theory unless a better one took its place. Our reasoning has led us to the conclusion that each productive laborer produces his own wages, and that increase in the number of laborers should increase the wages of each. Whereas the apparent facts are that there are many laborers who cannot obtain remunerative employment, and that increase in the number of laborers brings diminution of wages. We have, in short, proved that wages ought to be the highest, where in reality they are lowest. Speaking of this, I applied to 2 math tutoring positions. Haven't heard back. My friend Caesar, roommate Caesar, he has recently applied to several positions and gone in person several times to a few restaurants and the airport to try to get a job. And they just say they get hundreds of or thousands of, I think LAX told me like 10, like, I don't know, 1,000 plus resumes, and it's just a lottery draw to pick who they're gonna whose resume they're actually gonna look at and offer jobs to. So I don't know. We have this issue today. That's all I'm saying. We're in a place where labor is willing, and yet it's tough to find a job, I guess. I don't know though, because isn't unemployment pretty low right now? I don't know. Let's keep going. Nevertheless, even in doing this, we have made some progress. Next to finding what we look for is to discover where it is useless to look. We have at least narrowed the field of inquiry, for this at least is now clear, that the cause which, in spite of the enormous increase of productive power, confines the great body of producers to the least share of the product, upon which they will consent to live. It's not the limitation of capital, nor yet the limitation of the powers of nature which respond to labor, as it is not, therefore, to be found in the laws which bound the production of wealth. It must be sought in the laws which govern distribution. To them let us turn. Alright, to the distribution. I think yeah, we won't make it through this. I don't know. Damn, you can't. Nah, that went too fast. I apologize to my Spotify listeners. They're not, and my YouTube viewers. They're not. This was a blunder of input. It will be necessary to review in its main branches the whole subject of the distribution of wealth, to discover the cause which, as population increases and the productive arts advance, deepens the poverty of the lowest class. We must find the law which determines what part of the produce is distributed to labor as wages. To find the law of wages, or at least to make sure when we have found it, we must also determine the laws which fix the part of the produce which goes to capital and the part which goes to land owners. For as land, labor, and capital join in producing wealth, it is between these three that the produce must be divided. That is a key little statement there. We're just baking it in that land, labor, and capital are the pillars of production. No more, no less, I guess. Of course, land is often thrown in with capital, but that we must be very careful about. Alright. What is meant by the produce or production of a community is the sum of the wealth produced by that community. The general fund from which, as long as previously existing stock is not lessened, all consumption must be met and all revenues drawn. As I have already explained, production does not merely mean the making of things, but includes the increase of value gained by transporting or exchanging things. There is a produce of wealth in a purely commercial community, as there is in a purely agricultural or manufacturing community, and in the one case as in the others, some part of this produce will go to capital, some part to labor, and some part, if land have any value, to the owners of land. That's cute, George. If land have any value. Real cute. As a matter of fact, a portion of the wealth produced is constantly going to the replacement of capital, which is constantly consumed and constantly replaced. But it is not necessary to take this into account, as it is eliminated by considering capital as continuous, which in speaking or thinking of it we habitually do. When we speak of the produce, we mean therefore that part of the wealth produced above what is necessary to replace the capital consumed in production. When we speak of produce, we mean therefore that part of wealth produced above what is necessary to replace the capital consumed in production. And when we speak of interest, or the return to capital, we mean what goes to capital after its replacement or maintenance. It is further a matter of fact that in every community which has passed the most primitive stage, some portion of the produce is taken in taxation and consumed by government. But it is not necessary in seeking the laws of distribution to take this into consideration. We may consider taxation either as not existing or as by so much reducing the produce, and so too of what is taken from the produce by certain forms of monopoly, which will be considered in a subsequent chapter, Chapter 4, and which exercise powers analogous to taxation. Monopoly exercises powers analogous to taxation. Deal with it later. After we've discovered the laws of distribution, we can then see what bearing, if any, taxation has upon them. Ooh, real cute again, George. George is just a cutie patootie with his little foreshadowings. If land has any value, if taxation has any bearing. George continues. We must discover these laws of distribution for ourselves, or at least 2 out of the 3. For that they are not, at least as a whole, correctly apprehended by the current political economy may be seen, irrespective of our preceding examination of one of them and any of the standard treatises. Alright, that sentence was fun. Yeah, he's just saying current thoughts, or current treatises, they do not correctly apprehend these laws. George says this is evident in the first place from the terminology employed. In all politico-economic works, we are told that there are 3 factors in production, that the 3 factors in production are land, labor, and capital, and that the whole produce is primarily distributed into 3 corresponding parts. 3 terms, therefore, are needed, each of which shall clearly express one of these parts to the exclusion of the others. Rent, as defined clearly enough, expresses the first of these 3 parts, that which goes to the owners of land. Note that this means the payment that rent is what goes to the owners of land. We're not talking about when you rent out when you go to Hertz and rent a car, the slightly different kind of rent. Wages, as defined clearly enough, express the second, that part which constitutes the return to labor. But as to the third term, that which should express the return to capital, there is in the standard works a most puzzling ambiguity and confusion. All right, of words in common use, which comes nearest to exclusively expressing the idea of return for the use of capital is interest, which, as commonly used, implies the return for the use of capital, exclusive of any labor in its use or management, and exclusive of any risk, except such as may be involved in the security. The word profits are as commonly used, is almost synonymous with revenue. It means a gain, an amount received in excess of an amount expended, and frequently includes receipts that are properly rent, while it nearly always includes receipts which are properly wages, as well as compensations for the risk peculiar to the various uses of capital. Unless extreme violence is done to the meaning of the word, it cannot therefore be used in political economy to signify that share of the produce which goes to capital, in contradistinction to those parts which go to labor and to land owners. Yes, alright, so we do not call it profit. Wait, is that what he said? Yes. Profit is a complicated term. We will not be using that when we are referring to the return to capital when production occurs. The return to capital will be called interest. Now, all this is recognized in the Standard Works on Political Economy. Adam Smith well illustrates how wages and compensation actually, I might end it right there. We're entering a new chapter. Lot to swallow there. We got our 3 pillars of production: land, labor, capital. Land gets to collect rent. Labor gets to collect wages. Capital gets to collect interest. Profit is a confusing term. All the other current political theories seem to not do a good job of explaining why there is poverty alongside progress, but if we do not provide a suitable replacement theory, everyone will return to the bad theory. That's pretty much what we got. Yeah. See you next time. Like and subscribe and return to my YouTube page. Later.